We're going to explore the story of a woman whose life was marked by tragedy and whose faith was tested in ways few can imagine. Her name is Sarah, and her story begins in the ancient land of Media, where fate seemed to be cruel to her from the start. 7 marriages, 7 husbands, and yet all were taken from her before she could even experience the joy of marital bliss. But this isn't just a story of loss, it's a story of divine intervention, a tale of redemption, and how one woman's faith and perseverance led her to break a curse that had held her captive for years. Keep watching, and if you enjoyed this episode, please hit the like button, share with your friends, and subscribe for more. Now, let's start. Sarah's story unfolds in the ancient city of Ecbatana, where she was born into a loving family. Her parents, Raphael and Edna, cherished her deeply and raised her in a household filled with care and warmth. Sarah was not only known for her beauty, but also for her virtue and grace, qualities that made her a prized daughter in the eyes of many suitors. As she blossomed into a young woman, her parents dreamed of a bright future for her, hoping she would marry well and build a life filled with happiness. Yet, despite their best efforts, fate had a different plan. Each time Sarah was wed, tragedy struck. Her beauty, once a gift, became intertwined with a cruel and relentless curse. Sarah had been married 7 times, yet each marriage ended in unspeakable tragedy. On every wedding night, before she and her new husband could even come together, a demon named Asmodeus struck and killed them. One by one, her husbands were taken before the marriage could be fulfilled. This cruel pattern left Sarah not only widowed repeatedly, but drowning in sorrow, fear, and shame. Whispers spread. People looked at her with suspicion. They feared her, as if she were cursed. But what hurt Sarah the most was not the demon's attacks. It was the scorn of others. One day, even her father's servant woman mocked her, saying, "You are the one who kills your husbands. You have already had 7, and you have not borne the name of a single one of them." These words cut deeper than any wound. Sarah, already broken-hearted, now felt humiliated in her own home. The shame and ridicule became too much to bear. In the privacy of her room, she wept bitterly. Overwhelmed by despair, Sarah began to contemplate ending her life. But even in that moment of darkness, one thought held her back: her father. She couldn't bear the pain her death would cause him. Sarah had already brought him grief through the deaths of her 7 husbands. She did not want to bring him sorrow upon sorrow. In the midst of this relentless pain, Sarah began to question her place in God's plan. She had lived faithfully. She had done no wrong. And yet, suffering clung to her like a shadow. Why was she, a woman of integrity and belief, being crushed by a burden she never asked for? With a trembling heart, she turned her face toward heaven and poured out her anguish. She wept and prayed, desperate for answers. "Why, Lord, have you allowed this to happen to me?" Her voice shook with pain. "What sin have I committed to deserve this shame, this curse that follows me?" The silence that followed only deepened Sarah's sorrow. She felt alone, abandoned and forgotten. The cruel words of her father's servant echoed in her mind, accusing her of being the cause of her husband's deaths. Humiliated and broken, she withdrew to an upper room in her house and shut the door behind her. There, in her despair, she lifted her voice to God. She no longer prayed for comfort, she pleaded for release. "Lord, I turn my face to you. Command that I be released from the earth. Do not let me live to see another day of this grief." She did not pray out of rebellion, but out of deep pain. She feared bringing shame to her father, Raphael, who had only her as his child. Her sorrow wasn't just for herself, it was for the name and honor of her family. "I am the only child of my father. He has no other heir. Do not let them reproach him on my account. Spare me, O Lord, or take me from this earth, that I may hear reproach no more." Sarah wept freely. Her words poured out from a heart broken by loss, fear and shame. But she still believed God heard her, and though she could not see it, at that very moment, her prayer rose before the throne of God, together with another prayer from a noble man named Tobit, and heaven prepared an answer. Yes, far away from Ecbatana, in the city of Nineveh, another cry was rising to heaven, this time from an old and righteous man named Tobit, Sarah's distant relative and the father of Tobias. Tobit, once a man of standing and generosity, had been struck blind after helping others. He had buried the dead in secret during a time of persecution, risking his life to honor God's law. But his suffering was deepened not only by his blindness, but also by poverty and the bitter words of his wife. Feeling abandoned by everyone around him, Tobit lifted his heart to God in sorrow. "Now, O Lord, take my life from me. Let me go in peace, for it is better for me to die than to see so much distress in my life." At that very hour, the same hour that Sarah was weeping and praying in Media, Tobit was also asking God for death. Two souls, unknown to one another, united in their grief, cried out to the same God, and God heard them both. At that very moment, the prayers of both were heard in the glorious presence of God. Heaven responded by sending the archangel Raphael, a messenger of healing and restoration. Raphael was sent to heal Tobit's blindness and to bring Sarah to Tobias as his bride, freeing her from the torment of the demon Asmodeus. Though neither Sarah nor Tobias knew it yet, their deliverance had already begun. Their stories were about to meet in a way only God could have written. Soon after Tobit had finished his prayer, he remembered the silver he had deposited years earlier with a relative named Gabael in the land of Media. Though blind and weary, Tobit knew it was time to send his son Tobias on a journey, not just for the money, but for something far greater. He called Tobias and said, "Go and bring back the silver I entrusted to our relative. Find someone trustworthy to travel with you." God had already prepared the answer. Tobias found a companion. Though he did not know it, the man was no ordinary traveler. It was Raphael, the archangel sent by God in human form, calling himself Azariah. Little did Tobias know, this journey would lead him to something far more significant than the financial riches he was sent to collect. In the form of divine intervention, Tobias's path was about to cross with Sarah's, and through this encounter, both their lives would change forever. In his boundless wisdom, God sent Raphael to guide Tobias on his journey, not just as a protector, but as a wise and compassionate companion. Taking on the form of a fellow traveler, Raphael walked alongside Tobias, offering counsel, insight, and spiritual guidance at every step. Throughout their journey, Raphael's presence was a quiet but powerful reminder that Tobias was not alone. Along the way, they stopped to rest by the Tigris River. When Tobias went to wash his feet, a large fish leapt from the water and tried to attack him. At Raphael's command, Tobias caught it. The angel told him to keep the heart, liver, and gall, saying, "These parts have powerful healing properties. They will be needed." Raphael then told Tobias about a woman named Sarah, the daughter of Raguel who lived in Ecbatana. He revealed that she was his relative and the one appointed for him by God. "You are her closest relative. She is to be your wife, and do not fear the demon, for I know what to do." Raphael then shared the sorrowful tale of Sarah's life, revealing how the demon Asmodeus had taken the lives of each of her 7 husbands on their wedding night. Despite this, Raphael reassured Tobias that Sarah was a woman of great faith, chosen by God to be his partner, and that her suffering was about to come to an end. Raphael revealed that with God's help, Tobias could overcome the evil that had plagued Sarah's past. The angel explained that Tobias would need to follow specific instructions to protect himself from the demon. With Raphael's guidance, Tobias gained the strength to confront the darkness that had tormented Sarah for so long. Finally, they arrived at Raguel's home in Ecbatana, ready to marry Sarah. When they arrived, Raguel welcomed them warmly. But when Tobias asked for Sarah's hand in marriage, a shadow fell across Raguel's face. He feared the same fate that had come to her 7 previous husbands. Still, Raguel recognized Tobias as a man of faith and allowed the marriage, praying with trembling hope. When Tobias and Sarah first met, there was an immediate and undeniable connection. Despite all the pain and heartache Sarah had endured, she saw in Tobias a man of genuine faith and integrity, someone who could see beyond her tragic past and love her for who she was. Also, Tobias was drawn to Sarah's strength, her resilience, and the purity of her spirit. As they prepared for their wedding night, there was no fear in Sarah's heart, only a quiet trust. She believed, with all her being, that God had sent Tobias to deliver her from the curse of Asmodeus. That night, Tobias and Sarah entered the bridal chamber. Tobias, remembering Raphael's words, burned the fish's heart and liver on the incense burner. As the smoke rose, it filled the room with a holy presence. And then, something unseen but powerful happened. The demon Asmodeus, who had haunted Sarah for so long, fled in terror, driven away by the power of God. Raphael pursued the demon and bound him in the farthest regions of Egypt, never to return. Meanwhile, Tobias and Sarah knelt together in prayer. "Blessed are you, O God of our ancestors. You made Adam and gave him his wife Eve to be his helper and support. Now, Lord, I take this sister of mine not because of lust, but with sincerity. Grant that we may find mercy and grow old together." And God did just that. The curse that had bound Sarah for years was finally broken, and in that moment, Sarah was freed from the suffering and despair that had defined her existence. The next morning, when Raguel and Edna heard the joyful news, their hearts overflowed with relief and happiness. They witnessed the transformation in their daughter, no longer the sorrowful widow, but now a radiant bride. For the first time in years, Sarah's eyes sparkled with hope, her spirit lifted by the promise of a new life. The curse that had lingered over her like a dark cloud was gone, replaced by the light of love and possibility. Sarah was no longer the tragic figure she had once been. She was now a woman filled with peace, ready to embark on a future filled with love, joy, and all the blessings that had been denied to her for so long. Tobias and Sarah remained in Raguel's house for 14 days, rejoicing and celebrating the marriage that had once been feared but was now blessed. Raguel gave Tobias half of all he owned, servants, cattle, money, and goods, saying, "You are a noble man. May the Lord bless you both richly." Then they began the journey home. Tobias carried with him not only the silver from Gabael, but a far greater treasure, a healed heart, a faithful wife, and a divine purpose. Beside him walked Sarah, no longer burdened by a demon, but full of hope. And with them still was Raphael, the angel who had silently orchestrated every step. As they neared Nineveh, Tobias said to Raphael, "You've done so much for us. What shall I give you in return?" But Raphael only smiled and told him to wait until they reached home. Tobias hurried ahead of the group to greet his parents. His mother, Anna, had been watching the road daily, longing for her son's return. When she saw him, she ran to him, embracing him with tears of joy. Then Tobias took the gall of the fish, as Raphael had instructed, and gently applied it to his father Tobit's eyes. Tobit's eyes stung for a moment, and then Tobias carefully peeled away the white film that had covered them for years. Tobit's sight was restored. His blindness, both physical and spiritual, was gone. He praised God aloud, saying, "Blessed be God, blessed be his great name, and blessed are all his holy angels. For he afflicted me, and he has had mercy upon me. Now I see my son, Tobias." When Sarah entered, Tobit embraced her with joy. She was no longer the woman who had prayed for death, but a daughter welcomed into a house filled with light. Only then did Raphael reveal who he truly was. "I am Raphael, one of the 7 holy angels who present the prayers of the saints and enter before the glory of the Holy One." In awe, Tobit, Tobias, and Sarah fell to the ground. Raphael told them that their prayers had been heard, both Sarah's and Tobit's, and that he had been sent to heal them both. With that, Raphael ascended, and they saw him no more. The story that began in sorrow ended in praise. Sarah's cry was not in vain, Tobit's suffering was not wasted, and the prayers of two broken hearts reached the throne of God, who answered with healing, restoration, and a future filled with joy.